Today, we're diving into a really powerful text that unpacks the deep philosophical wisdom behind one of Islam's most important practices, Ramadan. It's going to reframe the fast not just as some religious duty, but as a kind of spiritual technology, one designed to completely change how we see everything. So let's just jump right in. The source we're looking at kicks off with this fascinating question. What if fasting isn't really about deprivation at all? What if it's actually a tool, an intentional practice designed for a complete transformation of how we perceive the world? Okay, so to really get the mechanics of the fast, first we have to understand its ultimate goal, its why. And according to this text, that purpose is to cultivate a state of, well, profound and universal thankfulness. I just love this metaphor. The source asks us to picture the entire world as this magnificent banquet table, absolutely filled with blessings we don't even notice most of the time. We're all guests at this incredible feast, but, we've gotten so used to the food that we forget to even see the host who prepared it all. So this isn't just about saying thanks. True thankfulness, as it's defined here, is actually a three-step process. First, you recognize where the gift came from. Second, you appreciate its real value. And third, you acknowledge just how much you actually need it. Fasting, the text argues, is the key that unlocks this state. It helps us break through what it calls the veil of heedlessness, that autopilot mode that kind of clouds our daily lives. So how does this actually work on a psychological level? I mean, how does the physical act of not eating or drinking literally reshape our inner world? Let's get into it. This is such a brilliant way to put it. The source identifies a part of ourselves, it calls it the instinctual soul, that acts just like a pharaoh. It wants total freedom, it imagines it's the master of its own little kingdom, and it completely forgets that it depends on everything outside of itself just to survive. So, here's the kicker. This part of us, when it's left unchecked, acts like a usurping, thieving animal, as the text puts it. It just consumes and takes, believing it has a right to everything, without any gratitude or recognition of where it all comes from. There's this powerful story in the text that gets right to the heart of this. It says, the ego is so unbelievably stubborn that even divine punishment couldn't break its pride. It's only the experience of hunger, that raw, fundamental need, that finally forces it to see the truth, that it's not some all-powerful pharaoh, but a dependent, impotent slave. And that's the mechanism right there. By fasting, you are the one who makes that inner pharaoh understand it is not in charge. It can't even do the simplest thing, like drink a glass of water, without permission. And this forced recognition of its own weakness, its own want, that's what opens the door to real gratitude. Okay, so that's the internal shift. But this whole thing isn't just some solo journey. Let's look at how this is also designed to completely reshape our connections with other people. You see, this slide lays out this super clear causal chain for empathy. The text basically argues that you can't truly feel for someone unless you've shared their experience in some way. Fasting is the great equalizer. It forces everyone, from a king to a pauper, to share that same fundamental experience of hunger. And this connects everything so beautifully. That internal spiritual state of thankfulness, it's just not complete with the external social action of compassion and charity. If you're really, truly grateful for the bounty on your table, that gratitude has to extend to caring for those whose tables are empty. So what's the ultimate profit from this month of intense discipline? I mean, what's the bottom line? Well, the text frames the answer in terms of a spiritual economy, which is really interesting. So get this. According to a saying in the text, Ramadan offers this massive spiritual return on investment. It all peaks on what's known as the night of power, a night considered holier than 1,000 months. And on this night, the spiritual merit for reciting just a single word of the Qur'an is said to be multiplied by this staggering number, 30,000. So you see, Ramadan is presented here as this divine marketplace, an incredibly fertile opportunity for what it calls the trade of the hereafter. The currency isn't money, it's things like intention, worship, and gratitude. And the return on that investment? It's described as nearly infinite. So the ultimate outcome is this incredible spiritual transformation. By consciously stepping away from our basic animalistic needs, we're invited to approach a more elevated, angelic state, where our temporary actions can yield eternal rewards. It's an incredible idea. But this principle of appreciating true value isn't just confined to Ramadan. It actually extends into a really powerful, year-round way of life that the text calls frugality. Now, the source makes a really crucial distinction here. Frugality is not stinginess. They are not the same thing. Stinginess comes from a place of fear and greed, right? But frugality, in this view, comes from a place of honor. It's an act of dignity and respect for the value of a blessing. And to really drive this point home, the text shares this fantastic anecdote about a historical figure, Khatim Tay, who was basically world famous for his insane, over-the-top generosity. So Khatim sees this old man struggling, and he makes what he thinks is this unbelievably magnanimous offer. He basically offers the guy 100 times what his work is worth, an act of pure, lavish charity, at least from his perspective. But the old man's response just completely flips the situation on its head. He refuses the offer. He says that the dignity he earns from his own hard work is worth way more to him than easy money. He's placing a higher value on his self-respect than on charity. And this just brilliantly illustrates the core argument. Khatim Tay, supposedly the most generous man in the world, realizes that the old man's frugality, his respect for his own work, his refusal to be dependent, was actually a higher form of generosity and dignity than his own wasteful extravagance. Amazing. At the end of the day, this text reveals a powerful framework where discipline isn't about punishment, it's about achieving clarity. And that clarity leads to empathy, which in turn fuels real connection. It suggests that in a truly spiritual economy, the ultimate currency for a rich and dignified life isn't about what you can acquire. It's about how deeply you can appreciate what you already have.